Property owners near the Mountain Valley Pipeline in Grassy Meadows are speaking out after a foreign pelleted substance was dumped on their property. Our Haley Brown explains what this means for these organic farmers' livelihoods, and this is a story you'll only see on WVVA.
A pelleted substance rains down on a farmer and his children while harvesting ginseng on their property near Grassy Meadows.
And a helicopter flew over, and about 10 seconds after it flew over, pellets started to come out and drop through, pelting myself, my children.
According to an EPA spill report, the pellets are Earth Guard, a product to prevent erosion and provide soil stabilization. The LaFerrier's farm, Blackberry Botanicals, is adjacent to a path cleared for the pipeline. The pellets fell over a quarter of a mile away from the pipeline path. The EPA spill report says pellets were dumped 2 more times, covering nearly 3/4 of the farmland. The injuries of the children will heal, but damage to the farm remains long after.
And I asked specifically of the environmental specialist, is there anything that we can do to clean this up? And he said, no, there's absolutely nothing you can do to clean it up.
The LaFerriers say substances in the pellets aren't organic and could void their farm's organic certification, diminishing their livelihood.
Non-organic black cohosh is $5 a pound. Organic is $38.
And it just feels like we've been steamrolled, abused, like they just don't care.
Here for you in Summers County, I'm Haley Brown, WVVA News.
WVVA reached out to Mountain Valley Pipeline for comment, and so far we've received no response.
But man was so conceited that he couldn't see the worth of all the other creatures who roam this lovely earth. One by one we hunted them for food and sport and breed, and one by one they disappeared, each species and each breed. And all these things I give to you to keep and to protect, from the greatest of the big blue whale to the tiniest insect, to rule with love and kindness the weak, the wild, the strong, and treat my creatures gently, only you know right from wrong. After many years had passed, the Lord came back to see the earth and his creations that he'd left so fine and free. Ah, but where are all my silver streams, the forests dark and green? There's only dust and desert for humankind to be. And all these things I give to you to keep and to protect, from the greatest of the big blue whale to the tiniest insect, to rule with love and kindness the weak, the wild, the strong, and treat my creatures gently, only you know right from wrong. Where are all my animals, the hippo and the whale, and the fish that filled the oceans before your ship set sail? The lion and the tiger and the elephant so tall, though I left you as the keeper, do you not recall?
Get all those pellets landing.
In August and September 2015, Auckland Council airily spread 1080 poison across 21,000 hectares of the Hunua Forest Park. Enough poison was dropped across the Hunua Ranges to kill over 380,000 people. Well, prior to the drop taking place, were you informed about taking water or not taking water, or whether to disconnect your water supplies?
I was told that the drop wouldn't be anywhere near our waterways, rivers, streams and water coming into the property or anything. So I was told that they would drop well clear of the waterways.
The operational toxin flight chart obtained under the Official Information Act shows that 1080 poison was dropped directly into all streams flowing into the dams and into streams flowing out of the operational area. Small buffers were in place around the dams themselves. The poison is dropped to kill rats, possums, pigs and deer. The poisoned pigs, deer and possums that die in and near streams can cause delayed contamination and increased levels of E. coli as they decompose. Regional councils issue the resource consents that permit the discharge of poisoned bait directly into waterways. Waikato Regional Council is currently in the process of issuing a consent to DOC, TB Free and Waikato Regional Council that will allow them to continue to aerially spread 1080 poison across forests and streams for another 35 years. The users of 1080 poison often claim that after testing, their water samples come back clear most of the time. However, in most cases, the testing process isn't following Landcare Research's best practice guidelines, which state, samples taken within 8 hours of bait application are expected to provide the greatest likelihood of detecting any residual 1080. Most samples taken for testing by agencies are collected 24 hours or more after the aerial drop, and after the poison has already been uptaken by aquatic life and plants, or passed through the water column and diluted into larger water bodies like the Hunua dams. The flight charts of recent drops on the Coromandel Peninsula, Mount Pirongia near Hamilton, and around the Tauranga, Taupo and Waimarino rivers near Taupo all show the poison was dropped directly into waterways within the drop boundaries at the same rate as the land areas around them. In most cases, people living near the drop boundaries are not informed that the water they are drawing from the operational area has had 1080 poison dropped directly into it, or that they are entitled to mitigation. Negative water sample results don't prove the absence of 1080. They demonstrate poor testing protocols, methodology and processes, and/or inadequate testing equipment.
Centre of the Auckland city's drinking water. We're aware that it can be an endocrine disruptor at parts per trillion, and the water care tested at parts per billion. So, and where's the research to say that it doesn't affect us, it doesn't hurt us, it doesn't have any impact on our health? I'd like to know where that research is. We're worried.
People claim that 1080 has been studied to death. Well, it's absolutely not true. It hasn't been studied to death. It's been very well studied in certain areas of its toxicology. But it's been very poorly studied in other areas. And some of these other areas are really important. And one of those is hormone disruption. We know that hormone disruptors can be effective in parts per trillion, way even below parts per billion. And 1 part per trillion would be the same as if you're making a gin and tonic. It'd be 1 drop of gin, and you'd have to then have 660 milk tankers full of tonic to dilute it to 1 part per trillion. And parts per trillion are enough to disrupt hormone systems.
It would take 10,000 lakes the size of Taupo to dilute the annual drop of 1080 into New Zealand's forests to 4 parts per trillion.
So where are the cancer-causing or carcinogenicity studies? There aren't any. Where are the reproductive studies, particularly focusing on female eggs? There aren't any. Where are the developmental studies, early exposures to brain, immune system? There aren't any. Where are the long-term chronic exposure studies looking at mitochondrial DNA content and mutation rates? There aren't any. There's a lot of doubts about the substance. It's dangerous.
Interestingly, with the studies that have been done on hormone disruption of 1080, the one that's been used by the Ministry of Health to set the safety standard in New Zealand was one of these studies which was like going through Wellington Harbour with a net with a mesh size as big as a house, because it only looked for gross morphological defects. Looking at the design of that experiment, I would conclude that it's not possible to come to any conclusion about the hormone disrupting capabilities of that toxin using that design, because it's just fundamentally flawed. Now, in fact...
Hello, I'm Jeff Patchett, known as Jack. I got the opportunity to farm up the top end of the Wairau, a farm called Mount Patriarch. I originally went to Patriarch in 1975 and helped the owner there and with all the big jobs, and then I got the right to buy it in '98, which I did. In 1997, we had one of the biggest outbreaks of bovine tuberculosis in the top of the South Island. We had 33 reactors, and I was absolutely devastated being a cattle farmer. My wife and I were, we just didn't know what to do. Animal Health Board arrived and they said, well, it's in the possums. You're going to have to do something about that, and the best thing you can do is 1080. We're planning on dropping a 1080 drop on 29,000 hectares in behind our farm, right down to Bartlett's Creek. Anyway, I was all for it. I said, look, if it gets rid of possums and my TB problem, go for it. Land on my lawn if you like. I can remember actually saying that to them. They said it targeted possums and everything else would be okay, and we didn't know anything about it. My mate had said it was a bad thing, but I didn't take much notice of him as a townie, and I didn't sort of take much notice of what he had to say. They come in and they did use the paddocks outside the house to fill the hoppers, and they worked for a couple of days and just absolutely. They say that they don't like to hear you say blanket drop 1080. Well, this was blanket dropping 1080. There was a bait to every square metre, and one of their biggest baits. We thought, oh well, that's good. That's over and done with. Didn't think much of it. Wife and I would go for a walk around our little bit of forest block that we wouldn't let happen. Everything seemed to be okay. About 10 days later, we could actually smell the death up in the valley behind us, and met my neighbour. We went up and checked our water supply. There were 15 dead animals in there, including wood hen, deer and pigs. There were the dead birds, just blackbirds that I found first, but we found the 3 pet wood hens straight away. They were near the gate going into the neighbour's place. And then continuously for the next week or so, we were dragging animals out. Animals were dying, secondary poisoning, and we thought, this is absolutely terrible. What the hell have we done? Why did we ever let these bastards ever do this? Then we thought, what about our care? Christmas time, we would always have a traditional Christmas on the front lawn, and the day after Boxing Day or the day after that was always a walk to the top of the mountain, and basically to appreciate everything that we had. So we'd walk to Mount Patriarch, and we'd see Kia on the mountain. The most we'd ever counted was 23. That day, that was nearly 3 months after the drop. We couldn't count them. We couldn't count one. There was just no care. We thought, oh well, maybe this is, they'd moved off or something. My son and I were up there again hunting. Months later, nothing. And then we'd heard that 1080 is particularly tough on care. So I went to DOC and told them. They admitted that there was a fair chance that they may have poisoned the colony, but I said, look, you've admitted to me, why can't you admit to the public? Tell people what's actually happened. You love to skite about your successes. Tell them about your failures as well. That's fair. All I could get out of them was there's a good chance that we did kill your cares. Well, not my cares, everybody's cares. It was one of the saddest days of my life when I realised that those cares were no longer on that mountain. They'd been there. The farm's 120 years old, and there's records, old books and things going back to a really strong colony of care on that mountain. And then for them to just kill them like that. 2004, they come back for another drop, and we were onto it this time. We said, look, you bastards have killed our cares. You've killed all our moorpork. South Island tomtit's completely gone. We're going to fight you tooth and nail. You're not coming anywhere near the place. We went to a commission. It was held in Blenheim. I put a submission in against it and told them what they'd done. But they just sat there with smirks on their faces, knowing full well that there's no proof. The commissioner, he said to me, you're too emotional, Mr. Patchett. come back with some science, knowing full well that as a farmer I didn't have any science. Well, the only science I had was what I'd seen, what my family had seen and what my neighbours had seen.
Looking at the design of that experiment, I would conclude that it's not possible to come to any conclusion about the hormone disrupting capabilities of that toxin using that design, because it's just fundamentally flawed. Now, in fact, the design that was used for that experiment, I wouldn't even pass that research in an undergrad level of environmental studies at Victoria University, because it just wouldn't stack up.
In December 2008, the Ministry of Health released the following statement. Studies show that 1080 can cause fetal skeletal malformation, cardiomyopathy, damage to the heart muscle, and testicular effects, reduction in sperm count in animals. To date, there are no known epidemiological studies that have been carried out in relation to 1080 and potential adverse health effects on humans.
I think the question we have to ask is, who do we value? Do we value pregnant females and their unborn children, if it's a human, or their unborn birds, if it's a bird, or whatever? I mean, if we value these things, and if we're concerned about them, then we need to have a close look.
And all these things I gave to you to keep and to protect, from the greatest of the big blue whale to the tiniest insect, to rule with love and kindness, the weak, the wild, the strong, and treat my creatures gently, only you know right from wrong. I treat my creatures gently, only you